Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. I'm Jason Valen from Hard Money Bankers, Ian Horowitz, Equity Warehouse, and back in studio, Denis Shapiro. Looking forward to chatting with Denis one last time. If you didn't hear his original episode that he talked that we did with him a few weeks ago, definitely check that back. It was ridiculous. He's involved in so many different asset classes. So that episode went a little bit longer, but certainly worth it. We wanted to invite him back on to talk about the deal that changed his life. I'm sure it's definitely going to be an interesting one between all those asset classes that he's passively investing in. You know, he's currently operating affordable housing and some hospitality. Definitely seems like you've done a ton of deals. Like, to you, which is one that has changed your life, Denis? How are you?
Thanks, guys, for having me back on. So just a quick intro in case you didn't catch the first episode. So I've been investing in stocks for the last 20 years. I transitioned into balancing out that portfolio with alternative investments over a decade ago. And then I had a path where I went from being strictly a passive investor to being an operator. And now I do both. Mainly with mainly on the operational side, focusing on affordable housing and hospitality. And in terms of the deal that I guess has changed my life forever, the easy answer would be the operational deals, because once I went there, whether or not it was my 50-unit affordable housing building or my hospitality with our beach bungalows. But I'm actually going to pick a passive investment that I did. It's actually the first deal that went bad on me. And I think that changed a lot of things, because I started investing in passive investment in 2012. And then from 2012 till 2022, it was really hard to lose money on investments. However, I lost money because I invested in a Ponzi scheme. It's going through court, but I'm going to mention it anyway. It was a local Ponzi scheme. The name of the company was called NRIA. And it was a situation where there was tons of red flags on the actual investment. But I came in with my investment club at that time, and we got incredibly favorable terms. And I let the terms kind of overshadow the red flags that we did notice. I don't know if people are familiar with it. NRA is about 2 years ago. It went, I guess, Chapter 11, and then it came out that it was actually a Ponzi scheme. Now, they actually had an actual business where they did a lot of developments outside the New York area and the Florida area. They was a real business. However, it was wrapped up with this fund for investors that paid guaranteed returns. And I'll put the words guaranteed in quotation marks. That's the first red flag. You never ever want to see the words guaranteed in any investment. They used to advertise on the radio. They had a big billboard when you got out of, I think it was Holland Tunnel, one of the major tunnels coming out in New York City. And I just learned so many lessons from that deal. And I was going to share some of the lessons here. One, and this is something I picked up also when I was writing my book, is be careful with evergreen funds. There's two kinds of funds out there. There's an evergreen funds and there's closed-ended funds. A closed-ended funds is, for example, I'm going to raise $5 million. I'm going to take that $5 million and I'm going to invest it with Jason on hard money lending. When it comes back around, the fund will go full cycle and we'll close it out. An evergreen fund is, hey, this fund is going to be open-ended. You come in with 100,000 today or come in a year, whatever it is, it's going to stay open and it will stay open indefinitely. The problem is sometimes you stop getting a correlation between investor capital and an asset. And one thing that I learned from my securities attorney, and this is something they love saying, if you've ever talked to a security attorney, is 99% of Ponzi schemes never started out as a Ponzi scheme. It was a real business that the operator just did not want to stop distributions, lower distributions, whatever it is. And then it became a perpetual cycle until the investor capital kind of dries up. And then it's revealed that there's these bigger issues at play. So the first lesson I learned from that deal, NRA was an evergreen fund. And that, like, if you can't look at the profit and loss, the balance sheet, and clearly understand what is what, then you probably shouldn't be investing in that project. So that was one of my key takeaways from there. Number two, relationships matter in the alternative investment space. Like, if I spent 5 years getting to know with Jason, I would feel way more comfortable with giving him money for hard money than go to a crowdfunding channel and trying to get an 8, 9, 10% and go through that, because there's no relationship building in that scenario. So relationships matter. In our situation, we were dealing with the investor relations person because I never really got to meet the CEO. I didn't really understand the culture of that organization. And while it doesn't really seem like it matters when you wire that money, it really does. You really want to make sure you're investing with someone, because if the guy on top is an honest, ethical, hardworking human being, most likely the organization is going to follow suit. So you should probably even know silly things like, well, what kind of car does the CEO drive? Like how many kids does he have? Things like that really, really matter. So that was the second lesson. And then the other lessons is, and this is not to throw shade at any third-party auditors or anything like that, is don't over-rely on promises, guarantees, and auditing. The company NRA had each one of them. They were they had a guaranteed fund that was backing our investor returns, and then they were being professionally audited by a very large accounting firm in the state of New Jersey. All of that meant nothing when the dominoes fell down. So instead of focusing on guaranteed returns and all of this other stuff that really means nothing, focus on relationships, focus on building those relationships, and that will, stay the test of time.
Yeah, I think those are really, really good lessons. And the word guarantee is always a red flag. I hate using it. I never try to use it, obviously, in just banter when you are talking with your friends and family. Oh, yeah, it's like almost guaranteed. And you're like, whoa, I can't say that, because that is a red flag 101. I find it interesting, and I would just like you to dig a little more. What other due diligence do you do on operators now if you are co-investing with someone, or what kind of due diligence are people doing on you to invest in your funds?
Yeah, so we don't really capital raise for any projects that we're not direct operators on. So we usually stick to the affordable housing and the hospitality, but we have done a co-deal in the self-storage space to kind of try out the operator. I think mainly is just to get a feel and don't dive right in. Like if you like the operator and you really think that there's a potential for a future, partnership, the main thing is to realize that partnership does not have to be today. That partnership can come around. It's almost like dating, where you're not going to go get married after one good date, right? So you want to kind of build in that thing, like, yeah, ask for that second date or whatever it is, blah, 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 over time. Also, when you're doing due diligence, make sure you're doing due diligence on the entire partnership team and not just one member. You could have, like we had issues with this, where we had a really great rapport with one member of the partnership team, but the second member of the partner team, not that he was a bad guy, he just didn't value investors as much as we did. And it came up in conversations, and it came up during the equity splits, and it became a thing where it's like, hey, sometimes we just have to give up a few percentage points and it will go a long way for our investors. And like one of the things that I usually do is I have my core of like 5 to 10 investors that always invest in our projects, and I reach out to them when we're structuring the deal. And I want that active feedback. And if I take that feedback to a new partnership that I'm working on, I expect them to respect that feedback. And when you hear that feedback being dismissed quick, that's usually a bad sign that in the future, your partnerships aren't going to align. Because at the end of the day, like our livelihood is dependent on our investors' capitals. And if we're not executing that properly, like our careers are over in the syndication space. And in terms of due diligence on me, I think the most interesting request I had was a local investor actually asked me for my personal financial statements. And at first I was like, well, that's strange. As an LP, I never asked that. And then like afterwards, I was like, you know what? I think she's actually right. Like I don't actually see a reason why I wouldn't give it to her. And then I actually kind of felt silly that in all my deals, I never as an LP asked that, because every deal is going to go through hardships. And like one good example is the hospitality one, where when we purchased in 2022, we couldn't get a fixed loan because there was a huge construction component, because we had to make it into a hospitality actual play. And because of that, we couldn't, rate lock historically low rates. And all of a sudden we start the construction, and, the construction costs balloon and everything like that. And there were times where the GP team had to come out and, front a construction draw of 150, 200,000. So an investor should know that we're capable of doing that. And it's not just going to be a capital call for them. So those are the things that I think were actually, like, in hindsight, I wish I would have asked that more often. I'm sure it would have avoided a few investments that I was like, oh, I really like the guy. But sometimes you want to make the operator uncomfortable a little bit, like a smidge, I would say, just to see how they would react. I think that's important. And not like weird uncomfortable, but like uncomfortable in the point where it's like, hey, I'm not just going to wire you the money. I want another layer of due diligence and see and how they respond. I remember specifically on one deal, I met an operator, not a partner. This is when I was more on the LP side of things. And at that point, I was getting on calls with 2-3 operators at a time. And, I liked what he had to say. And then he sent me a deal, and I gave him like a page of feedback and questions. And I spent like an hour drafting this email, and I reread it. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I was like super impressed with myself. I patted myself on the back. These are awesome questions. He's going to love it. Hopefully this is, and I'm going to invest in the deal. No response, crickets. It was like he wanted nothing to do with it. And I was like, okay, no problem. Like, maybe he wants to spam, whatever it is. I didn't really follow up at that point. That's not my job. My job was to analyze the deal, send him questions, and see how he responds. He never got to that stage, so maybe he didn't respect it enough. But that's commonplace. I've heard that if you ask the right questions and you see how their true nature, and that's the best way, is try to determine their true nature before wiring that money.
Yeah. The simple response is, hey, man, I don't think this investment's for you. Thanks for the questions. I don't think this investment's for you. Maybe we can catch on the next one, right? And you duck out the door peacefully. Like, whatever. But you know what? Those are really awesome lessons. And I think we could probably do another hour episode with you, because we really enjoyed this conversation, because this is what Jason and I talk about literally every single day. How to continually invest capital, how to do it the right way, how to expand our network. Denis, where's the best place people can find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, or they want to grab a copy of your book?
For the book, easiest place is Amazon. You could search my name or the Alternative Investment Almanac. In terms of getting in touch with me, just go on sihcapitalgroup.com, capital with an A. You could also email me directly, Denis with one N, at sihcapitalgroup.com. We also have a decent YouTube channel where we post once a month webinars that we like to do. And those are kind of the best places to reach me.
Hell yeah. We'll get all that in the show notes, guys. If you got any value out of this, more importantly, let's show our love to Denis for the great conversation over the past few weeks. Go ahead. Feel free to share this, and we will catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.